Let me reshare. That one was on me. Um, and then we have the third type of memory, and this is long-term memory. So these exist for an extended period of time, and they are typically big life events that are encoded in your brains automatically. So maybe you went to a family member's wedding, or you had a big birthday party when you turned 10 years old. These are the type of memories that will require a lot of practice to store them. Kind of like if you were studying for a vocab test or a science test, the more memory is recalled or practiced, um, the stronger it becomes. So you are more likely to remember that memory.
So now we think about how are these memories stored in our brains. So our brain has these things called neurons, which are the basic building blocks of the nervous system. So neurons store information by forming connections called synapses with other neurons. So as you can see, this neuron is projecting to another one. So when you recall a memory, there's a certain connection that happens in the brain between two neurons. And so that's how the memory is activated. And so a few parts of the neuron that are important are the dendrite, which receives information from other neurons, the cell body, which contains all the information that the neuron needs and produces all of the neuron's energy. Then lastly, we have the axon, which is what actually relays the information from one destination to another and creates a pathway for recalling the memories. The neurons transmit information in the form of electrical signals called action potentials. And so the flow of information through a neuron is directional. So let's say you have two neurons, neuron A and neuron B. The information you received at the dendrite of neuron A travels down the axon, and then the axon of neuron A connects to the dendrite of neuron B to make a synapse. And then this is where the information flows from the dendrite of neuron B through the axon to the next neuron. And so this forms a whole cascade of neurons passing on information to each other. So think of it as a very accurate game of telephone. So when to get the message to the last person, you need to relay that message from person to person until the last player. But thing is that neurons never lose any information.
So our sense of smell is intertwined with memories and emotions. So kind of like that example I brought up and a few of you as well. So when these smell molecules or scent molecules enter your nose, the olfactory bulb in your brain detects and processes these scent molecules. The olfactory bulb is physically connected to the amygdala and the hippocampus, which play roles in processing of emotions and memories all in your brain. And together, the olfactory bulb, the amygdala, and the hippocampus, along with other brain structures, make up the limbic system, which is in charge of memories and emotions. Now, because the olfactory bulb is directly connected to the limbic system, smells and memories become associated with each other. So when you encounter a certain smell, like those cookies that I mentioned earlier, you may think of a specific memory when you were making them with your family, your friends, or anybody else. So all of this happens in the brain and how those are all connected.
So now let's talk a little bit about the diseases that affect our memory. So dementia is a general term that describes diseases that affect mental functions, and it covers a wide range of diseases and symptoms. But the main four that we like to classify them amongst are Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, and frontotemporal dementia. The most common form of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. So for those with Alzheimer's, which some of you probably have heard of before, it's characterized by memory loss. Dementia can affect many other different types of cognitive functions, though, aside from memory, including our emotions, our decision making, how we talk, our reasoning, and how we move or our motor skills. And so Alzheimer's disease, like I said, is the most common form of dementia, which results in a permanent loss of memories and mental functions. On the screen here, we have three different brain scans, which show brain activity. So the red indicates where in the brain there's more activity, while blue means that there's less. So can one of you tell me which one has the most brain activity or which one of these brains is the healthiest? Again, red means that there's activity and blue means there's not much activity.
The first
Any
one.
volunteers? The one on the left?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so the one on the left is what a normal brain usually looks like. So this is mostly red and yellow, or showing that there's a lot of activity happening in the brain, with only a few regions being green or blue. The middle brain here has mild cognitive impairment, which means the brain isn't fully degenerating yet, but it's starting to. And so the blue and the yellow show that the blue and the green show that there's less activity happening. And then in the last one, you see that there's very little red, mostly blue and green, and then there's this big hole in the middle, showing that there's not much activity happening at all. This indicates that a fluid cavity, which is a loss of brain matter, is forming. And so Alzheimer's disease is caused by the death of neurons because neurons are damaged in this disease, and that leads to the loss of connections and networks formed by the neurons.
So before we talk about these different causes of Alzheimer's disease, I want to ask you guys, I'm going to give you guys a quick pop quiz. So can someone tell me what a neuron is? Avi went over it a few slides ago. Has something to do with the nervous system. Samantha, I think you raised your hand.
It is something that makes you remember something.
Yeah, basically, it's the building blocks of the nervous system. Good job. All right, so we'll continue here. Um, so here we have two images, um, one of a healthy neuron and one that may be proof of Alzheimer's. So we have the healthy one on the left and the one with the possibility of Alzheimer's on the right. Now, Alzheimer's disease is caused by the abnormal buildup of a protein on neurons in the brain. So how this buildup of proteins might be causing some sort of memory deficiency. So those scientists are not exactly sure about what happens to the neurons of people with Alzheimer's. There are two different phenomena or two different theories common among Alzheimer's patients. So the first one is a protein called tau protein, which you see on the right there with that green arrow, excuse me, is normally found inside the axon. So typically, as you can see, the one on the left doesn't have those proteins on the outside, but the one with Alzheimer's does. So in Alzheimer's disease, these tau proteins start to clump together and they form tau tangles and block the transport of materials from the cell body down to the axon. So when something is trying to get from the cell body down into the axon, these proteins are inhibiting it from doing so. So this is kind of like a traffic jam. Because of all the cars also on the road, it's preventing you from getting to your destination faster. So let's say your parents are picking you up from school, but then on the way home, there's a traffic jam. So it's making it a little bit more difficult to get home and it's taking a little bit longer. So the transport of these materials is necessary for the axon to survive and communicate to other neurons through synapses. And another protein called the amyloid protein is also normally found inside the axon and not outside. So again, on the right, we see that those amyloid proteins are on the outside, but we can't actually see them in the healthy one. So amyloid starts to collect and they form these bundles called amyloid plaques at the end of the axon where it connects to other neurons in your brain. However, it is unclear how these amyloid protein accumulations contribute to Alzheimer's disease, but there is a hypothesis that it triggers a process called the neurodegenerative process, and that causes the neuron to stop functioning. But again, there's not 100% certified research on this. So these are only theories that the scientists are studying, but we don't really know how these play roles in Alzheimer's disease. And also, there may be other factors involved that we don't necessarily know about yet.
We've learned about smell, we've learned about memory, and we've learned about dementia. But how can we use these smell tests to help detect some of these diseases? Smell and memory are physically connected, so a loss of smell can help indicate a loss of memory. In fact, the loss of your smell or a sense of smell can occur a long time before you even start noticing the symptoms of dementia or memory loss. The loss of smell can occur to 10 years before you're even diagnosed with dementia.
With research done by scientists, the loss of smell could be an early indicator that an individual may develop memory loss, and in this case, that would be dementia. So there are these things called smell tests, which help identify individuals that are at risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Preventative measures can be taken to slow the progression of the disease, and the patient can be screened regularly and diagnosed early before symptoms become severe. Now, just because you're losing your sense of smell, that doesn't necessarily mean you have Alzheimer's or memory loss. And this is because as we age, we naturally lose our sense of smell. So here you see a graph, and the results of a smell test are on the y-axis, so that one on the bottom, going from left to right, and the age is on the x-axis, the one going from top to bottom. So our ability to smell peaks from ages 15 to 60. So you can see that red circle there. That's where we have our peak sense of smell. So when we are young, our sense of smell is still developing, like you all here. And when we age, our sense of smell gradually declines. So if someone happens to be losing their sense of smell at an earlier age or a faster rate than average, this could be a sign of Alzheimer's disease.
Smell tests can help lead to a diagnosis of a brain disease before it's too late. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive disease, so it happens over time, very slowly. The tau tangles and the amyloid beta take time to accumulate and it doesn't happen overnight. And so as a result, the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease develop very gradually. And even though you can't cure Alzheimer's, there are ways you can take preventative measures if you think someone is at risk. Now, can one of you tell me some of the measures that we can take to help prevent or slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease?
You can type it in the chat if you want. Can give you guys a hint. What are some games that you play that require you to think really, really hard? Something that stimulates your brain and really makes you think. Anyone have any ideas? Um,
Four.
Yeah, logic games is a great answer.
yeah, word games,
Let's
that's
see,
a good
word
one.
games, chess, these are all great answers. Puzzles, wordscapes, yeah, these are all great answers. So
Right.
intellectual stimulation by playing these type of games like crossword puzzles, word searches, Sudoku, these are all great ways to help prevent or slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease because you're keeping your neurons active. And other ways you can prevent it are staying socially active. Um, Another way is to screen early for the disease. So as you age and you approach maybe 65, a lot of people should start to screen for whether they have symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. For those that may be at risk, having a plan of action if they do develop Alzheimer's disease is really important because unfortunately, a lot of these people with Alzheimer's disease need long-term care. A random fact about Alzheimer's disease is that your most recent long-term memories are more susceptible because they are weaker memories than ones that are older and have been recalled many times. I had a friend who lived to 104 who suffered from memory loss, and she forgot my name early on because she met me when she was in her 80s. But she was telling me a detailed story of how she made her prom dress when she went to high school in the 1920s.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So what's next? Where can we go from here in terms of science and research? So, scientists and researchers are constantly studying dementia, trying to identify the causes, develop new treatments, and search for other preventative measures and early indicators, such as smell tests that we mentioned before. So, you could be part of the next researchers that find a cure for Alzheimer's and all types of memory loss. Um, we have if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat, but Avi's going to go over one last thing here.
There's some exciting news. Um, so Biogen, which is a pharmaceutical company, has come out with a drug named aducanumab or Aduhelm. And this drug is an antibody drug that was designed to help destroy the amount of amyloid beta that we talked about that formed in the brain. And so this would slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease. So as we talked about before, there's been no drug to help cure those with Alzheimer's disease. But this is the first of its kind that's come out in the past 18 years.
All right. So that's the end of our presentation. And now we will go into an activity very quickly. Let me just get that pulled up here. All right. So now we'll start the activity. So, the first activity we're going to do has to deal with smells and memories. So I think I had asked Cynthia to tell you to all gather 3 items in your home that have a smell to them. So does everybody have their 3 items? If not, you can quickly grab something um, and make sure that they have very different scents. Um, and you'll see why in a second. I'll give everybody until 1 o'clock to gather those.
I have my 3 things.
All right, great,
I have
Samantha.
my 3 things.
Great. How's everybody else doing? Everybody have their 3 items?
I have mine.
All right. Okay, so let's keep going here. Now I want you to make a list of those 3 items and write them down, but don't smell them yet. I just want you to write down those 3 items, or you can just remember them since they're sitting right in front of you. All right. So now that you have each of those items, I want you to smell each one and then jot down or write down a memory that you have associated with the smell. But if something you chose doesn't have a memory associated with it, that's okay. You can just leave it and you can leave it empty, or you can just write none. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to do that. If you need any help, you can type it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask. All right. Did everyone smell each item and write something down? All right. Seems like people are still writing, so we'll give it another minute. Brittany, do you have a question? Okay.
And also, my name's not actually Brittany. My mom had to sign me in, so that's why it says that.
Oh, so what's your name?
Malachi.
Okay, nice to meet you. All right, is everybody ready? Not yet? All right. I'm gonna get going here, so let's go to the next step. So let's do some discussion first. Let's share some memories. Um, does someone want to share what items they chose and what it reminded them of? Let's go Miles first.
One of my items was a Sharpie,
Mhm.
and I remembered the smell from when I was writing with it.
Nice. All right.
Another
And what
one
about
was tape, and I remember when I put tape over my nose. I don't know why I did that. My other one was an orange, and I remembered it from eating it. So
Nice. And we'll just do one more but we'll have more chances for you guys to share. But what about Samantha?
One of mine is syrup because I remember having pancakes this morning. The
Mhm.
other one are cookies because I love cookies. And the next one is seasoning because we cook with it all the time.
Nice. All right. So now let's talk about which smells were easier to think of memories for. Was it the ones you wrote down or was it the ones you physically smelled? So let's say you had an item, let's say you had a pencil in front of you and then you smelled it. Now, do you think that memory would be stronger than something that you just thought of or the actual pencil itself? Maya, do you want to share?
Sure, I think that if you smell it in like real life, it will like you can really think about it instead of just randomly thinking about it.
Yeah, good job. And that's because, again, as we went over in the presentation, um, all of those memories in your brain are connected to those scent molecules. So if those scent molecules enter your nose, um, you do really have those memories really come up. So does someone want to share any memories that were super detailed? You can just unmute because you can unmute and speak if you'd like. Sure, go ahead.
this freshener, I think, and
like it smelled like flowers, and it smelled like flowers and a patch of flowers out in a farm
Oh, so a very detailed memory for you, yeah?
on a sunny day.
Yeah, that's nice. Okay, and we'll do one more question before the next activity. Did recalling any of the memories make you feel a certain way? Were there any feelings that were stronger for, let's say you wrote a list of items down, or the smelled memories? So let's
Yeah,
just focus on the smelled memories.
I drew
You,
rocks.
what was that?
This.
Mm-hmm.
It smelled really, really, really gross.
Do you have any memories with that smell?
Yes, I always get cuts because I'm always like climbing trees and stuff. So I fall and I
Mm-hmm.
cut myself. My mom would put this on me. I don't know why. And yeah,
Yeah, that's a very that makes you feel a certain way. Probably that
and
you don't
it
want to
and
get
it
hurt again.
and it stings
Yeah.
really bad.
See, that's a very strong memory that you have there with that smell, because you're also relating it back to multiple memories. So thank you for sharing. All right. So now we'll get into the second activity. So now we're going to design a smell test. Now remember, these smell tests, they were used to possibly help diagnose Alzheimer's before it gets really, really bad. So you've been hired by me, Lopez, and Avisura Scientific to create a smell test to screen for Alzheimer's disease. But first, we need your help to pick out 5 different scents to include in the test. So let's brainstorm some ideas together, see what items we can include in that test. So these are some questions to think about. Will most people know what this smell is? Should I use good smells or bad smells, or maybe both, one of one and one of another? How often do I encounter this smell on a regular basis? Is the smell unique? Is it easy to confuse with another smell, or does that even matter at all? And lastly, do I have a diverse set of smells, or are they all similar? So, for example, are they all fruits? Or is there maybe a fruit and then some type of flower and some other different things? So I'll let you guys think about that for a second, and then we can start discussing what items we should put in our smell test. All right, so now let's choose some items together. Does anybody want to share one item that they thought they would want to include in a smell test? And you can just unmute, or you can put it in the chat.
Garlic.
Garlic, that's a good one. Yeah, that's very distinguishable smell, and it's really strong too. That's a good one. Maya put onion.
Can I use the bathroom?
Yes, you can go use the bathroom.
It's the bathroom.
An onion is a good one. Very strong smell. Mouthwash is another good one, and that's very different from the other options. So I think it's important to have various scents, because it might help in the future determining how the brain is functioning. A lemon is another good one. It's always a good idea to put some fruits that are have a very strong scent. Um, Lavender and orange, those are good ones too. Great job, everybody. So here's an example of a standard smell test. So you can put in a rose, peppermint, leather, an orange peel, and fish. And these all have very distinct smells, but they're also all very common. We all know what a rose smells like. We all know what fish smells like. So these are very common scents. And that's why we should put things that people know and encounter on, not necessarily on a daily basis, but enough that they know and can distinguish that scent. And here are some resources and videos, some things on what happens to the brain in Alzheimer's, learning more about that drug that Avi talked about at the end of the presentation, and also how to prevent Alzheimer's disease.
I have a question.
Yes, you can ask your question.
What time is class over?
What time is class over? Well, our presentation is done, but I believe it's supposed to go till 1:30, but our presentation is done unless anybody has any questions. For Avi and myself, you can unmute or you can throw it in the chat. We can answer any questions. It doesn't have to be about the presentation.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, don't be shy. No questions?
How old would somebody like be to take this smell test?
Avi, you want to answer this one?
Sure, that's a great question. They can be any age, but typically people will take the smell test early in their 40s, 50s, because Alzheimer's disease usually happens once you're in your 60s and onwards. So in order to do the smell test, you do it usually like 10 or 15 years before like the expected age. Does that make sense? Great question.
Thank you.
I have one question.
What's your question?
So Alzheimer, there's this one man who made a cure for it, I think. Well, his first disease was Alzheimer's. I forgot his name though.
Well, if you know this man, please let me know who he is because Alzheimer's disease doesn't have a cure yet.
Well, his first disease was Alzheimer's.
People can have Alzheimer's, but there's no cure for it yet. They're still working out really hard to find a cure.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, thank you for coming today. I hope you learned something. And I hope this inspires you to pursue science like Avi and I have. Although we're studying different things, the spectrum of science and STEM in general is so wide. I'm sure you will find something that will interest you, and hopefully maybe one day you can cure Alzheimer's in 20, 30, 40 years, and that would be so awesome. All right. Thank you everybody so much for
Bye,
coming.
guys.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Bye, guys.